Okay. So today is the last day of the Mother Divine Retreat. It's also Vijaya Day, huh? Victory Day. Who wants to say what Victory Day is about? Do you know? Nobody knows?
Yeah, we talked about it this morning.
So who wants to say what Victory Day is about, if you all know? Okay.
So yesterday was the big battle with Mahishasura, the big buffalo-headed demon.
Right. Between Mother Divine and the demon, yeah.
And the Mother Divine in the form of Kali is who really did the fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And so she won, so we're celebrating the victory.
So we're celebrating the victory of Mother Divine over the demon. What's that about? What is it about?
I mean, I think the demon is identities and egos and
Identity.
not being lost to them.
What's that?
Not being lost to them.
Yeah, identities and egos. We'd more specifically say, though ego is the conventional term, we'd more specifically say small self-egos, petty egos, limited thinking of who it is and what it is we are. You know, it also is today's the event. Another very special event occurred on this day. Anybody know what that is? Marlene.
The day that Rama was returning home from Sri Lanka.
Yeah, the day Rama defeated Ravana. Yeah, and so he's returning home now. Yeah, good. It's of course important to keep in mind that those aren't just legends. They're deeply structured, they're personified correlates to deeply structured mechanics within creation. That sentence in and of itself, if you understand that sentence, is really an important sentence to understand, you know. It's physics. There's a mechanic in the underlying structure of existence. Now, there is no time at the very depth of existence. Even modern physicists tell us that. But as the structure cascades out into relativity and time emerges, it's as if you have a deck of cards. Everything is simultaneously there, right? But as you go into time, it takes that deck of cards of simultaneity, everything at the same point in time, and spreads it out over the face of time, you see? And so in that sequentiality, today is the day that commemorates those points in the inner mechanic of the structure of existence. You know, right before I came down here, I do consultations with different business people and that, and someone called me this morning because they're doing a presentation to it's a major company you've all heard of, but I'm not going to say just because it's for confidentiality, you know. And he was going to be giving a talk and working with a group of the managerial people on the art of negotiation, kind of sales sort of idea, but negotiation kind of thing. And he had an idea of what he wanted to talk about, and it fit really nicely into what it was I wanted to talk about today, which is this, just the idea of clarity and what it means to be clear. What it means to really understand a situation, you know. In the business world, as in the rest of the world, really clarity sort of has this idea that you sort of have the situation figured out. You've got it zeroed in. You understand all the principles and stuff, and you see it for what it is. And once you do that, then you've attained clarity. And he was talking about how in negotiations, you know, he wanted to get people past that sort of, because it is a kind of a limited thinking. See, negotiation can't be, okay, I have my worldview. This is the way I see things. And all the facts and everything I accumulate and put together into the package is all viewed through that, pinpoint view at the nature of the situation. And so my job in negotiations is to convince another person of that point of view. And the important thing to understand here is that's not what clarity means. Getting clear on a situation, understanding a situation, doesn't mean finding that viewpoint that explains it, and now you've got it all figured out, and now you've got clarity on the situation. Even if you look at the structure of existence, that level that stands under everything, that level that upholds everything, that level that underlies everything, it's a field. It's an unbounded field. It's a field of no thingness. It's a field of no perspective. It's a field of no viewpoint. And when you function from that place, then you're functioning from a place of wisdom, insight, and clarity. It's not about perspective. It's not about finding an answer. It's not about defining a situation. In fact, it's the opposite. Clarity means being comfortable with the paradoxical nature of life, understanding the nature of life, understanding every situation, coming from that place that holds all the infinite number of different possible perspectives in a unified whole, even though they can contradict one another. And that's called a place of wisdom. Clarity means wisdom. And so in a negotiation, if you sit there and you have a perspective and you think that in the negotiation your goal is to have other people share your same perspective or come around to thinking the way you think, it's not wisdom. And it's trying to see your worldview is the sum total of all your life experiences that brought you to this point in your life. All the positive experiences, all the wisdom, all the insight, and all the hurts, all the distortions, all the confusions, all the limitations. Based on that, you create a worldview. You create a perspective on the nature of life, and you use that perspective to view any situation and come to a conclusion of what that situation is about. And so you're not in the midst of a tiny little negotiation going to take somebody's whole worldview, the sum total of all their life experiences, and convert them into a different worldview. You see? And even our own evolution means for that limited kind of thinking, that narrow pinpoint perspective on how life works and what it's supposed to be like and what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong. The grip that has on our awareness starts to soften, starts to expand, starts to open. And that's what it means to become understanding. You stand on a place of not thingness, not concepts, not perspectives, not rules, not limitations, but of openness. It means becoming open to the unbounded nature of life. You see? And you can imagine how in sales or in negotiations, how valuable it is to begin to function in that way. That when you hear what the person you're negotiating with might be saying, it's not like, okay, that doesn't fit my narrow point of view, so it's wrong. But it's, I hear that, I hold that, I'm with that, I understand that, and I work with that so that we can evolve a relationship and an understanding that's more consistent with the nature of life itself. You know, even simple little matters like, you know, with, you probably know about these, this fly's having a good time here. This whole thing with the football, and the guy's taking a knee before the game while they're singing the national anthem, kind of as in protest. And it started with one Kaepernick guy, quarterback for the 49ers, and now it's just expanded and became a big, huge thing. And we have feelings about that, don't we? And they can be strong feelings. Some of us can be feel very strongly that, yes, they have to protest these things that are so unjust and terrible. And someone else can say, well, the national anthem is about the integrity of our nation. And nations have a value. Nations uphold a culture. They uphold a camaraderie, a allegiance to a unified structure that upholds the life and the society for all of those people. And so to object to that, and the symbol of that, which would be the national anthem or the flag, is to, as if, you know, throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yeah, sure, there are problems with the nation, but do we turn our back on the whole nation and the symbol of our whole nation because, yes, there's this injustice or that injustice? But then on the other hand, we can understand how people are feeling a certain conviction, a certain passion, a certain need to express themselves, and here they have a venue through which they can do it. So before we can even proceed, even in a very simple example, whether or not to kneel when they're singing the national anthem before a football game, it takes a state of expanded awareness to be able to hold both of those paradoxical opposing viewpoints and then to move forward accordingly. And it's also not so much about taking a stand. Okay, I have to get clear. I have to get clarity on this situation. I have to know what's going on and get the answer. And so, okay, now that I've figured out the answer, now I take my stand. It's not even like that. Because as things move forward, as time moves forward, as situations move forward, we see what unfolds. We see and even in with the NFL situation, there's been like a grassroots uprising of the fans, and viewership is going down 13% from last year, and so many of the fans are selling their season tickets, and so much protest. And so that comes into the mix. What does that say to us? That says to us that it's touching a place in other people, even if it's not touching that place in us. It's touching a place in other people that is so repugnant, so they find so offensive, that now we have to bring that into the mix. We have to consider that. Does that mean they're right or wrong? Maybe, maybe not. But nevertheless, it's part of the situation. We can see the truth in both perspectives. But how do we move life forward? How do we move life forward? It's so different than trying to get a clarity trip, trying to come to a conclusion, kind of defining this is what happened and this is the situation and therefore that's how I feel about it, and now I've got an answer and I'm going to white knuckle onto that answer and move forward in life. We put something out, as I've said, we see what comes back, we adjust accordingly, and we move forward in a way that tries to evolve life. our life and the life of others around us and the whole world. So this whole idea of getting clear, it's a very interesting thing. See, as I've said, in the West, we're all about on-off switches, black and white, yes, no, bits and bytes. But life is not like that. And that's why I've heard saints in India say that it's very difficult to enlighten the Western mind. It's very interesting. And I think that gives us some insight as to why it can be so difficult to enlighten the Western mind, because that's how Westerners think. Let me get a clarity trip. And clarity isn't about the clarity of the unbounded nature of no-thingness that underlies all existence and understands everything. Clarity to the Western mind is about, get me that perspective that answers all the questions, and now I get it, and now I got it figured out, and now I'm going to hang on to that, and that's what's going to guide my life. And that's my decision, and that's my conclusion, and that's my truth. The Eastern mind really isn't like that. It's very different. It's very different. The head goes like this, you know. There's a not knowing. The only true knowing is not knowing. If knowing means that one pinpoint perspective on this is how it is and this is how it works. And when we meditate, what do? We rest into that unbounded perspective. When we do these retreats, what do? We rest in and we start to live from that unbounded perspective. And then we go out into relativity, cook lunch, whatever it is we do, and then we focus into a point value, into a perspective about how to make that dish properly. And then we go back into the unbounded perspective, and then we act, and then we transcend, and then we act, and then we transcend. And what starts to happen then, and it's such a beautiful thing to witness, that even though we focus, even though we have perspectives, even though we may get angry, we may have conflicts, all that rests upon a broadening and fuller foundation of unboundedness. So that even when we do take a stand, because in life we have to take stands, you know, things come up and we have to do something. But even when we decide to put so much salt in the meal or not put salt or what have you, there's a place deeper inside of us that we're more and more fully awake to, that knows that it doesn't really matter. It's not really an ultimate truth. If somebody wants more salt, it's not that they're bad and you're good and you're right and they're wrong, but it's a place of communion. And we function from that place of communion. And that is what love is. That's what real love is. Love is functioning from that place where you're one with all things, you're one with all perspectives, and you're one with all people. That's real love. It's not an emotional state, really. Oh, there is an emotional component to love, of course. But real love even transcends emotion. It's a state of physiology. It's a state of being. It's a state that permeates every moment of our life. And it's attained, well, symbolically, Mother Divine slays the demon. It's attained by, and we can say in a less violent way, which is more accurate actually, it's attained by melting away that rigid grip that our pinpoint view of life has upon us. And it even melts away our desire to find that pinpoint view on any situation that would, we think, give us clarity. We no longer think of clarity in that way. We think of clarity as not knowing, not as limiting, defining, coming to a final ultimate conclusion, you see. And that, coming from that place, that's called freedom. Freedom from identity. I've talked about freedom from identity. I've talked about all these things before. It's one thing to hear them and say, oh, that's really cool. That's a great idea. Yeah, I get that. That's such a cool thing. And then go out and live our life the way we were. It's a much greater thing when we start to live our life that way. And as we evolve, we start to live our life that way spontaneously. It becomes a natural thing. As we awaken to the unbounded nature that underlies all of life, we just naturally start functioning in a way that's free from that pinhole view that we previously called truth. You see? I think that presentation that man's going to give, the art of negotiation, really could be a very beautiful thing and a very effective thing. Winning a negotiation isn't about convincing someone of your own pinhole view, like a little pinhole camera, you know. It's not what negotiation is about. Negotiation is about communion. Communion is about coming from that place of understanding, that place of wisdom. And whoever it is you're negotiating with, if they're really negotiating, they would be with you in that process. Or at least feel, even though they may not understand it, they would feel that you're coming from that place of understanding. And that in and of itself would open a door to helping them move forward in the negotiation. We see this even in major negotiations. Our viewpoints of other nations and how countries negotiate with one another. It's all so much about pinpoint views, pinhole views. Yet we aspire to wisdom, but we think of wisdom as finding that pinhole view that's going to finally answer all the questions properly. That's just not what wisdom is. It's not what wisdom is. It's not a belief system. It's not identity with a paradigm or perspective. It's transcending all paradigms and perspectives and resting in that place that holds them all, that understands them all, you see? All right, enough on that. Looks like our fly is left. What else? You guys, what else do we want to talk about? We've got, another 20 minutes? Any questions about anything? Yes, ma'am.
Well, going back to Victory Day.
Going back to Victory Day.
So generally those two events happen on the same day. So Jodishly speaking, it's the same kind of configuration. So can we say that Jodishly speaking, that day is Victory Day for all of us in a sense because of the Jodish that's going on, or just because of the different things that are happening with astrology might not make it the exact same, but I don't know, I'm trying to find a parallel.
Yeah. So the idea is on Victory Day, does that mean everybody on the planet's going to be victorious? Does that kind of address what you're saying?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And the simple
Yeah.
things
Here's how that works. There's an underlying mechanic of creation that underlies all of us. And we could almost use it like there's one Earth. And that's that underlying mechanic. But rooted in that one field, we could even call it like a field of wheat, there are all sorts of individual plants. And so if this Earth was to move in a certain way, it would affect the movement of every plant at its root. But nevertheless, the tips of each wheat would be dancing to its own tune, depending on the wind, and we could refer to the wind as karma, and the wind isn't uniform. It's like a whirlwind, and so some of us go one way, some of us go another way. But what we're talking about here, then, when we talk about the mechanic of creation in the sense of Victory Day, we're talking about a deep underlying mechanic. That is a very positive force. The demons, the negative energies, the distortions, the limited thinking within our own physiology, rooted deep in our own physiology, you see? There's a movement in nature, in creation, that facilitates our ability to align with that more divine process. And that's why it's good to recognize those days, to acknowledge those days, to reflect upon those days, to think about what we just talked about. Because why? Because it's there, more lively, at the root of life on this day. And if we reflect on it, work with it, it helps us then align with nature. You see? It's actually quite a beautiful question. You know? And that makes sense, huh? It's beautiful, huh? It's beautiful. That's the whole idea of Vedic, and by Vedic, again, I mean nature. You know? Nature. Physics is about nature. Real Vedic knowledge is about nature. We can get confused in our understanding of physics, and it's not really physics anymore, but it's the pursuit of physics. We can also get confused about our understanding of Vedic knowledge, very subtle knowledge. And in one sense we could say, well, that's not really Vedic knowledge anymore. Well, but it's the pursuit of Vedic knowledge. And we ever continue to refine our understanding of that mechanic, to refine our understanding of nature. It's of nature. It's natural. In that sense, it's very real. It's not a philosophy. Philosophies get distorted as they pass from one person to the next, from one generation to the next. But nature is still there. That's what we mean by Veda. That's what we mean by Veda. You see? And so, if in that sense we pursue Vedic knowledge, real knowledge, not just intellectual understanding, but knowledge in the very cells of our body, the mechanism of our function, then we start to function more and more in harmony with nature, and thereby gain support of all of nature. And by recognizing and having a knowledge of these point values through time, all the different things we would call holidays in a superficial way, but really they're so much deeper, you see. They assist us in aligning with nature, our own true nature, and Mother Nature. And that speaks to the value of holidays in general. Because, for example, Thanksgiving. I mean, is there some cosmic principle underlying Thanksgiving? Well, maybe not in the sense that we were talking, that there's some nodal point in the mechanic of creation that when you spread out the deck of cards emerges on that day, November 25th or whatever. But nevertheless, even then, there is a value, a beautiful value of giving thanks, reverence, if you will. And on any day, if we all come together as a nation, for example, and rejoice over that value, then it creates a group coherence and a feeling among all the people that they share that, and it reinforces it and it strengthens it. And then Thanksgiving, for example, then becomes a day where that value, that exquisite value of just being thankful, is enlivened within our souls, within our being. And it's a very positive value, you see. So all the different holidays can be viewed, of all the different cultures, can be viewed in that way. Those holidays are woven deeply into the fabric of a civilization. And a civilization is that which civilizes the people. It's that which evolves the people. So in that sense, we can say there are two kinds of holidays. They're holidays that are very much rooted in the subtle mechanics of the quantum mechanical existence as that deck of cards is fanned out over the face of time. And there are holidays that might be more arbitrary, but still have an exquisite and divine value, and feed integrity and decency and harmony and all the laudable values of life into the very fabric of that culture. And so it might be for that reason that we can think, well, yes, they have a point, they have a conviction, and therefore they kneel when the national anthem is being played. But at the same time, there's an integrity to the culture that every time the national anthem is played and we all stand, we align with, we aspire to, we commit to the high end of that mandala, the nobility, the value, the purity of intent that dwells within the soul of every individual. And by coming together in those moments and saying, yes, we aspire to that which may dwell on high and which we may fall short from on a daily basis, but we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We don't turn our back on the distortions and misconceptions and impurities within our very civilization, but we come together at those times in order to feed the integrity of that culture and thereby cast aside any of the impurities. You see? But at the same time, do we become hostile and do we become divisive towards somebody that is upset and has to kneel? We understand. We understand. And I hope, and I believe, that these talks, over time, slowly help all of us realign with the highest values, the highest principles, the most evolutionary kind of thinking that facilitates harmony in humanity. Because it's how our minds work, it's how our consciousness works, it's how we view life, be it through a pinhole or through that unbounded place that holds all perspectives and understands everything. That determines whether or not there's peace in our home, peace within our own self, peace within our home, peace within our community, peace within the world. It's not about new thoughts. There are plenty of thoughts going in all different directions. It's about a new way of thinking, you see? A new way of thinking. In that sense, we could play with words here a little bit. The ultimate truth is that there is no ultimate truth. Or the ultimate truth is a field of no thingness. It's a field of understanding everything and holding on to nothing. But even that, we have to be careful, because that doesn't mean that we don't have convictions. That doesn't mean that we don't move forward in our life. But it means we do it from the foundation of wisdom and unboundedness and understanding, and not from a place of narrow, limited, petty kind of thought. You see? All right. Anything else? We have a little more time if you want to. Any other questions? This is a great question.
I had a question about the holidays. You know, at different times in my life, I celebrated holidays differently. Like when I was growing up, of course, it was with my family of origin. Then when I was married, then it was with my married, you know, my family.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I feel like as time has gone on, I actually more enjoy the holidays alone. I prefer it actually alone. I feel like I feel the feeling of the holiday alone more than I do with people. And I mean, I really enjoy them, but I do it more alone.
See, it's a very interesting question. I'll just repeat it. The idea that in the past she celebrated holidays first with her family that she grew up with from as a child, then she got married, another family. Now she enjoys holidays alone. And see what that is about is actually a very interesting thing, and that is that we culture our awareness in very significant ways. It's almost like we structure our brain waves, we structure how we function, how we think, not just intellectually, but also how we feel, how we are emotionally, our very state of being as it permeates through relativity into relativity. And we live in accord with that. And so how you live your life and how you've been living your life structures a mode of function, you could say, a state of being, a state of awareness, a state of physiology, not in the superficial sense, but in the sense of the mode of function of your own consciousness even, your own emotions, your being, the totality of your being on all levels. And that becomes a theme of your life. And that determines the nature of your life and your affinities and your aversions and how you function. So it's not just our civilization that cultures our being. It's not just our culture that cultures our being in a societal sense, but also in the sense of our home, our family, and also in the sense of us as individuals and our life path. You see? And that state of physiology that we culture is a very, 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 very powerful influence. It's not something we can just change. We can't just change our mind and say, oh, you know what, I've been living this kind of life, but now I'm going to live this kind of life. And as we go through life and we live life, we work with those situations we find ourselves in and how they cultivate our state of being, and we work to integrate that with our own nature. We all have our own nature. And as we go through life, we start to rest more and more fully into our own nature. And ideally, then we find a life situation that's more in accord with our own true nature. See, whether or not you're living this kind of life or that kind of life, or celebrating holidays alone, or celebrating holidays with a bunch of people or whatever, ultimately, that sort of thing isn't just a decision you make. It has to do with two things: the sum total of your life experiences and just your own true nature. And when you find a place where the surface of life and the activities of life are consistent with your own true nature, then you evolve most rapidly. You see? And we need to be, again, very understanding and very open-minded about what that is. It's not a pinhole view of life, and this is what my life's supposed to be like if I'm going to live a good life and if I'm going to be happy. And then you aspire to that. It's something that we find over time as we evolve. You see, as we grow as individuals, as we live our life. It's not something you conclude to do and then do it. It's a place that you find yourself. And you say, you know what? It was rough getting here, but it feels pretty darn good. You see? Beautiful question, yeah. 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 So we do well to pay careful attention to the life we are creating for ourselves. And we need to be very open to the uniqueness of our own individual nature, and do our best to keep our finger on that pulse, while at the same time we function in a manner that's in harmony with our culture, in our family, in the life situation we find ourselves in, you see. Very interesting, because the underlying principles of life are so simple, but the complex web that it weaves is unfathomable. And to gain clarity means to be clear about that. Clarity doesn't mean we fathomed it. Clarity means comfort and insight, deep insight into the unfathomable nature of that. And when you come from that place in any situation, anything that comes up in life, when you come from that place, then you're coming from a place of wisdom, a place of understanding, a place of humility. Again, it's not overstanding, it's understanding. So when situations come up in your life, because it's easy to hear this, oh yeah, I get that, great, okay, I can do that, no problem. But when situations come up in your life, challenging situations, that's the time to observe where you go, what you do. Do you look for that pinhole point of view, that's the answer, and now I got clarity? Or do you come from a place of wisdom and understanding? You see? Clarity has a lot to do with not knowing. You see? And a healthy relationship with the unknowable. And all of this is unknowable. See? All right. Anything else, or are we done? Sir.
You wanted to talk about how to treat sound in meditation. Did you want to talk about that?
When there's sound, we do that in the advanced techniques more. We'll do that in the advanced techniques, yeah. I'm having a lot of fun with the advanced techniques. I'm looking forward to teaching phase 2 of the advanced techniques. One suggestion I'll make to the advanced technique people, I want to do another follow-up video for live, whatever you call it, YouTube telecast or whatever, for the advanced technique people. But for now, what I'd say is when you're doing the advanced techniques, keep in mind that they're just things that come up naturally. They're not things that you do. And the value of studying the advanced techniques is just your awareness, the light of awareness. Now that we mentioned that, it's kind of like don't think of a pink elephant and then you think of a pink elephant. We mentioned these different facets of the nature of consciousness. And it enables us then to explore them more spontaneously, more naturally, than if otherwise they just go by unnoticed. So having said that, when you do your advanced techniques, really you're just doing your meditation. But before you actually start meditating, after you sit down and get settled and everything, you might think of one of these advanced techniques. And for those of you who've had it, you'll know what I mean by this. Feel into that advanced technique for a minute, and then start your meditation. Because that will set the angle through which you enter your meditation in a manner that's probably consistent with that advanced technique. If it's not, it's not. Don't worry about it. But if it is, it is, and then you just go with your instruction. It may then change from one advanced technique to the next. It may not. But it's a good idea once in a while to think of an advanced technique right when you sit down to meditate. Feel into it a little bit, and then just do your meditation as usual. And that advanced technique will probably be there. And if not, it's fine. Make sense? Yeah. And maybe that's the answer to your question, too. Yeah, it is. He's nodding. Sir?
I'm curious how this retreat felt to you.
How this retreat felt to me? have to say that because I've been so busy lately, what I felt was good, you know, everything was good, harmony, yada, yada, I could feel that. But when we did that Durga Havan, that was, to me, that was the how do we want to say it, the quintessential value of this retreat. And it really spoke to me of the power of this retreat. And even today, I still feel, what was it, we did that on Wednesday, and today's what? When do we do the? Thursday we did the Havan, and today's Saturday. I'm still, that's right, and I'm still feeling the influence of that Havan. It was unbelievable. Every year Mount Soma gets more and more and more powerful, you know. And honestly, when we do these Havan, it was a long Havan. And we sit there through that Havan, and I have to admit, I look around and say, geez, I wonder if these people can stand it. I can hardly stand it. How much longer am I going to have to sit here? And then it goes another hour, longer. And it's like, oh my goodness. You feel the power when the Havan's going on. But I think it was almost more so when I went back home. And I felt this, it's almost like a wave that was continuing to carry me. And it was just incredible, you know. And so, admittedly, there's a part of me that every year dreads that big, long hours in the Durga Havan. Oh man, I got to sit there. And I happened to twist my ankle right before it in the morning. And so sitting there cross-legged and all that, putting pressure on the twisted ankle. But it's fine today, by the way. Dave, you fixed it. You popped it and just fine. I mean, I hardly feel anything now. I think it also speaks to the maturity and the coherence and the wisdom that the core group here is embodying more and more and more. Everything I spoke of today about not looking through a pinhole, you know, I mean, and this actually brings out more about that, because I think every probably person in this room would say, well, I'm looking through pinholes all the time and I got mad at so-and-so for such and such or whatever. But that's not really what not looking through a pinhole means. You're always going to be looking through one pinhole or another. But it's when it is more and more carried or more held by this underlying place that transcends all pinholes. And so it's more and more like that surface value of pinhole perspective is just more and more lightly etched on the face of your being. And I'm seeing that in the ashram group and in the community at large. And that sort of thing, including the subtle shifts in the energy, the physiology, I'd say, of the people. The subtle physiology, you know. That's what really says to me more than anything, that this program works. It works. I'm not impressed by people if they can come here and recite all the different Vedic texts. I mean, that's great, don't get me wrong. But that's not what really impresses me. I'm not really impressed by somebody who comes here dressed up like, you know, with home signs all over them or whatever. If they want to do that, hey, you know, no problem. But what really does impress me is the mode of function in the sense that I just referred to, and seeing people function from that place of unboundedness, integrated with point value, you see, ever increasingly so. And That's what I see in this group. That's what I see in the ashram program. And the fruits of that, I think we enjoy more and more every year, because as that is lived more and more fully, the Havans become ever increasingly powerful. You guys are great. I mean, you're really, 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 really great. Brigunati said that this will become a city. That's the way he put it, city of enlightened individuals living in unity consciousness. And it's clear to me, we can see that is happening. That is truly happening. And it's such a subtle finesse, because it's so easy to take Vedic knowledge and turn it into a pinhole viewpoint of the world. And that's not what it is. Vedic tradition is very understanding, really, very forgiving, very accommodating. The true Vedic knowledge. Because why? It is that unbounded level. It's not about identity with anything. It's about understanding everything. That's Vedic knowledge. Very simple. The Veda, in the deepest sense of the word, is no thingness. It holds on to nothing. Beautiful. Okay, so now what? The retreat is over as of now, huh?
Well, we finish up the afternoon.
Oh, that's right. We have the afternoon.
This is the last lecture.
Right. This is my last lecture. Yeah, and tonight is over. There's a puja.
Yes.
Yeah, tonight, and after the puja, I guess we say it's officially over. Yeah. Well, life certainly is a roller coaster ride. We just stay rested deep in the unbounded nature of our own being as we ride the tidal waves of karma on the surface. That's all we can do. We just do our best, Okay. Jai Shiva Shankara.